Okay. Okay. Then I will skip reading the public comment information I can see if we get anyone, but I might need some help also monitoring that.
Okay.
Get anyone, then we'll just review the parameters around the public comment.
Right.
So first item for discussion, personnel, old business. Any updates on the internship program with Palomar College?
Yeah, Chris, you want to go ahead on that?
Certainly. So one of the first steps, which I've already completed, is to fill out an actual internship application. So it's been submitted. I'm going to talk to Jacob. I think he wanted me to possibly add some additional text to their application. There's some information gathering in that online submittal where they might want some additional detail where it was a little difficult for me to predict, kind of like the learning objectives and things like that. And when I had initially talked to Jacob, I thought the learning objectives may be very different for a water intern versus a wastewater intern versus a generalist water. And so I left it kind of open, and he may want me to drill down a little bit more on that. And then second, there is a affiliation agreement that needs to be completed and signed off before the month of October rolls around, and it's being reviewed by BB&K, and we are on track to have an intern start. The spring season starts on January 31st, so that's the very beginning of the spring internship.
That is great news. It sounds like there are a couple of administrative hurdles, but it sounds like they're all going to be accommodated pretty easily, and we're on track. That's great news. Thank you for doing that.
Certainly.
Yeah, and as Chris touched on, we'll fine tune the program depending on who the intern is. Once they select an intern and we get a better feel for what they're hoping to accomplish through the internship program, we can tailor it better, maybe more field oriented, maybe more office oriented, but between the college and the intern, we'll figure that out with them.
That's great. And I think it is important, this is kind of a pilot project, and we're starting out with just one. And I think that that's a good way to approach it, because if we start out with too many folks, then it might not set us up for success. But if this one goes well, then perhaps we can take on a few more in the next coming years. That's great news. Okay, any more comments or updates about that?
No, not from us.
Okay, all right. Moving on to public awareness. Update on the bill consolidation for large customers. Any updates on that?
Yeah, I want to apologize for my voice today. I'm struggling with cold and flu here. Yeah, we're still in communication with the San Alejo Hills folks. We're having a little problem connecting their backflow meters and their meters with their account numbers. So the ball's kind of in their court right now, and they're helping us to align all the data. Once that's all done, I think it'll move forward pretty quickly. I was in touch with them as early as this morning, so there's more as recently as this morning. So hopefully by the end of the week, we'll have all that data in, and we'll be able to get a better feel for how long it will take to consolidate the bills.
Okay, so by the end of the week, you think that they will be able to provide to Vallecitos the information that you're asking for, and then once that is taken care of, then it'll be clear how to move forward with.
Yeah, because right now we're still trying to get our hands around the scope of the problem. We think we know the total meters, but just assigning, we have account numbers, they have meter numbers, they have backflow device numbers, they have their own internal accounting. So we're trying to make sure that all lines up before we go too far down and nobody can make sense of the data.
Mm-hmm.
I got the sense that it wouldn't take them that much more time to do that. So hopefully this week, and then we'll reach out to them once they provide us with the data and let them know if we need any more data or if we're ready to go forward. I don't see any problem with the bill consolidation. Some of the other issues they raised may be a little bit more challenging, but the bill consolidation, I think, will move forward pretty quickly once we get all the data aligned.
That's also great news. What do you think the next steps would be once you have the data in-house?
Probably just come up with a mock bill, and Wes, jump in anytime you want to. But once we get an idea of the total number of meters, we can create something that's similar to what we've done for, I think it was the city that we do this for. So we could use that as a template, populate it with the data from the HOA, and then share that data with them and make sure that the format is good before we just start preparing a bill. So once they give us approval of the format, then we can start consolidating the bills. One issue, and Wes helped me out, I don't remember if all of their accounts were on the same billing cycle. If we send out bills by billing cycle. So if they have some of their meters are on different billing cycles, we can group them either into a reduced number of bills by billing cycle, or we can change some of their meters from one billing cycle to the other to consolidate them all. So Wes, do you remember if they're all in the same billing cycle?
I don't remember, but we can do what we do for the city is a delayed bill. So if they're not, for some reason, they're usually close because they're around the same area. So we'll issue we call it a delayed bill. We just put, the earlier cycles on the later bill, I believe it is. And we can do it that way. One challenge with this might be our system limitations as far as what we can display on a consolidated bill, because with so many account numbers, you only have so many pages. So we'll have to work with them and see if they are happy with the information and provide them whatever we can. But that it may be a challenge based on what they're requesting and what we can provide given the system limitations.
Yeah, we told them on the very first time they reached out that there may be certain system limitations, but once we get this kind of, I'll call it a mock bill put together, I think we'll be able to tell them what the limitations may be, and that may guide how we move forward. My guess is that they'd be happy if we can reduce, even if they got maybe 2 or 3 bills, that would be better than 40 bills. So we'll do the best that we can to get it to 1, but system limitations may limit us how effective we can be doing that.
Yeah, so we can get it to 1 bill. It's just a matter of if they want to see historical usage on that bill for different accounts, that's where it'll be difficult for us. It's with the city, we just show, here's your, total usage for all of your accounts, and it's like a 2-page bill. We don't have any historical data, charts of the past, stuff like that. And I think that's one of the things the HOA is requesting. But we'll work with them once we get the mock bill, like Glenn was saying, and do the best we can to make them provide them what they need.
Yeah, and that's why the second part of the request really complicates the first part, because the second part is they want to be able to have that data to look account by account to see if they're doing better. So they'll be needing specific detailed data for that meter. So when you consolidate it, you may lose some of the, more granular data that they're looking for. So we'll work with them and let them know what the consolidated billing may or may not do to their ability to track their usage by account. But I think we're close to doing that, but it may be 2 separate activities. One may be a consolidated billing and the other may be a detailed usage by account, but we'll figure it out.
Thank you. Thanks for staying on top of that. I think, I think this will be a good service that we can provide to them. And, once we work out the kinks, then it might be something that we can offer to our other large customers as well, but we can cross that bridge when we come to it, just one step at a time.
Okay.
Here. And it sounds like you're making great progress. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. New business, the scholarship program. I know that we've talked about this a little bit in the full board meeting. So let's bring it up here.
Yeah, so Director Hernandez raised this at a board meeting about a scholarship program. I talked to him a little bit about getting some clarity. We actually took the item forward to the Finance Committee because the Finance Committee, obviously there's maybe money involved. The Finance Committee was supportive of the concept, no specific details, but they asked that it be discussed at the Policy Committee. So that's why it's on the agenda today. So happy to entertain any discussion on that, but the general concept is to have some type of scholarship that would help probably high school age kids, maybe kids going into college, to probably help pay for college education in a wastewater related field. So that's the basic concept that Director Hernandez had. He'd be happy to provide more information or his thoughts, but for now, I'll just be interested in seeing what thoughts the Policy Committee may have. So I don't know where we want to go from here.
I think it's a great idea. I think having some parameters around it, I don't know if we've ever done this in the past, but I think it's a great idea. It goes hand in hand with some of the other initiatives that we've started in this committee, where we are, promoting education and promoting with the idea of trying to move people into jobs to help backfill some of the openings that we're going to have. So I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, my advice is that it be geared towards something that furthers the goal of an individual that's interested in our industry. So it wouldn't just be a financial award for something, but it would be to apply towards like college level courses or something like that, attainment of a certification, something like that, as opposed to just a gift or a grant of money for maybe some water related purpose. For example, other agencies may have like a program where they may have like a video contest. So you can win money by submitting a good video, but it doesn't necessarily apply towards furthering that person's career in a water and wastewater field. So my advice is that it be tied to that, maybe to help defray the costs of tuition or books or fees or whatever it is. But that's just my thoughts.
I like that suggestion.
And whether we do one for each of maybe I guess there's 3 high schools when you consider High Tech High, or if it's just one scholarship that's competitive amongst all the high school students, that would be, up to the committee and the board ultimately.
Yeah, I think there are 4, right? Foothills is also.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah. So obviously, if we start having more, we'd either be investing more money or we'd be diluting the pool, or we can have one bigger scholarship that's just a competitive scholarship based on whatever criteria the board sees fit.
I see Rondi's hand.
Rondi?
Hello there. I was just going to suggest, if it sounds like a good approach, we could reach out to other agencies and see if anyone has established this type of program. That's usually our starting point, is before we reinvent the wheel, we see what else has been done, and then how can we use that in the way that achieves our goals. So I wouldn't mind taking the lead on that, if that's okay. I imagine there's also going to have to be some review by legal to make sure the program is set up appropriately, and we're not doing anything that might get us in trouble.
Yeah, one of the things we always worry about is like gift of public funds, right? We have to make sure that we can justify the expenditure as a legitimate business cost. Rondi, thanks for volunteering. If the policy committee likes that approach, staff can go do some homework and then either bring that information back to the policy committee or agendize an item at the board and share the information we find with the board.
I like that approach, and I think there's no reason to reinvent the wheel if there are examples out there, and then we can bring it back and customize it to what we want to accomplish. I think one thing that I would like to be careful about, I do want to make sure that this scholarship isn't only open to folks that are wanting to attend a 4-year college. I think in keeping with some of the other initiatives that we've already discussed, I think it's important to provide some funds for people that maybe want to achieve an associate's degree or attend a 2-year college. So I want to make it as inclusive as possible. That's really the only caveat that I can think of. And I think we do want to include all 4 high schools, or, I guess depending on the structure, but I don't want to leave out Foothills. I don't want to leave out High Tech High. Let's just make it open to everybody if we can. And I know that we haven't really settled on the amount. I think that may be driven by, how much it costs to attend some of these programs, or we could standardize it. I think there are a lot of possibilities, but I'm happy if Rondi takes the lead and she wants to investigate it, and then we can have further discussion. I think it's a great idea. Fully support it.
And I'd actually give more preference to the Palomar College route as opposed to the 4-year, because that's really where I think our need is going to be. Those folks that want to get certifications and work more, not just field operations type of stuff, but not excluding the 4-year colleges, but we really need to start gearing people up at that level.
Great point. Thank you. Okay, so the action items then are that Rondi is going to take the lead on that and do some investigating, and then should we wait for a further staff presentation about it to see what's already out there, and then we can keep discussing it further?
Yeah, Rondi, do you think you can get something done in a month that we could bring something back at the next policy committee?
Yeah, I don't know what I don't know yet, but it sounds reasonable to at least reach out to other agencies and then see how big of a project this is going to be.
Yeah, so Director Boyd Hodgson, why don't we continue to put this on this agenda and we'll provide an update. If for some reason there's no update, then that will be our update, right? But we'll keep it on the burner, and we'll continue to process it through policy until the policy committee thinks it's ready to go to the board.
Okay, that sounds good. Director Pennick, do you have any comments or any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I did have a thought, actually. Thank you. So are we trying to dial down to specifics? The only thing that came to mind is, I know we're talking about the four high schools and things, but one came to mind is the, because we're so close to Pendleton, some vets that might be after 4 years, they have had some experience in water or wastewater at Pendleton or wherever, and maybe want to further their water career as a 4-year vet or something. So I don't know how we can include them in that, but that's the only thing that came to mind.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Maybe I can share with you a program we already participate in. The County Water Authority took a lead, and I think the program is called Skill Bridge, and it's specifically intended to help transition people that are getting out of the military into civilian life in the water and wastewater sector. So we participate with the Water Authority by, if we have job announcements, we will put them on our website, and we will potentially allow like an internship program. The military has funds where they actually pay their outgoing people to develop a new skill set. So the military, the Skill Bridge program, basically the military pays the salaries of the people, but they get qualifying job experience at an agency. It's kind of in its infancy, so we don't have anybody on board yet that comes out of that program. But I think this scholarship may or may not work well with that program. But that's been a big focus of ours, is trying to help those people timing out of the service to redeploy, because they have an amazing skill set, but they up to now, it doesn't seem like they've sought employment at the local levels. It appears most of the military people have gone into the federal branches of government. I think it's easier with their retirement packets and benefits. But I think the Skill Bridge program is trying to help them. I realize that they could be eligible to apply their military service credit into a local program. So I don't know all the details, but we are working with the Water Authority on the retiring military folks in that aspect. But I think your point is well taken. They should not be excluded from this scholarship program.
Well, even better, we get somebody like that on the military's dime. So even
Yeah,
even better.
yeah, and that may be one of those things. If they're getting paid by the military, then they're not eligible for the scholarship. But if for some reason they're not eligible for the military training program, maybe they're already out of the military and missed the window, then they could still qualify.
Well, okay, gotcha. Nope, thank you. That's all I had. No, I support everything that you're doing 100%. I like it.
Yeah,
think
we
that's a
we have quite a few military vets here that work here, Rondi being one of them. So we have a soft spot in our heart for the military, and we'd like to encourage them to join us and bring their tremendous skills with them.
Yeah, I didn't know that about Rondi, so that is great.
Yeah, she's a Marine.
Hey, hurrah!
I think that's a great point. And Chris, maybe, I think I'm remembering this properly, but I think Jacob mentioned that quite a few folks that come through the program at Palomar are people changing careers, and there's a significant proportion of them that are veterans. Do you remember him talking about that, Chris?
Yeah, I think that's an actuality, and maybe, I'm not quite sure how we want to tailor the scholarship, but it might be appropriate for, rather than just saying, high school students, moving on, but just anyone that's enrolled in college, either 2-year or 4-year. Maybe that would be the way to do it.
Yeah, I think we have a lot of options here, and maybe we do. I think those that have work experience, especially if they are coming from the service, will have they might have a competitive advantage, for example, over someone that's just coming out of high school. So I don't see a reason why we couldn't maybe designate 1 or 2 for each, but let's we can cross that bridge when we come to it, when Ronnie comes back to us with what's already out there. I think we have kind of a blank slate right now, and I know that we as a district want to help as many people as possible, and we do have an eye toward backfilling these jobs that are going to be coming open in the next few years. So I think as long as we keep our eyes on that prize, we can try to arrange it in whatever way works the best for our community.
And just a heads up to Rondi, I don't know if you've heard about the San Marcos Promise. So there's already kind of a platform set up for us, maybe just to contribute via that platform. So like you said, we don't have to reinvent. But the San Marcos Promise seems like it's, I don't know much about, but I know I've read a little bit about it. That's a platform for companies, I think, like ours to contribute and to help people, students in their launching their futures.
Yeah, and we've met with Lisa Stout, who kind of oversees that program, to look for benefits in there as well. She never really looked to us for money, but she did talk about cooperative type things and internships and those types of things.
Okay.
Great, thank you. Any other comments about the scholarship program?
Nope.
Okay, moving on to Imagine a Day Without Water.
Yeah, before I turn this over to Chris, maybe just a technological update. I want to thank Patrick for starting the meeting. I forgot to start the recording. You probably heard that it started a little bit after the start of the meeting, but we are not able to put the video together. Since the meeting already started, we can't go back and enable the video. So we'll go the remainder of the meeting without the video component. So I apologize for that. But Chris,
so is that just because the recording started before?
No, I don't think it was that because the recording, I think it's something the way the meeting was set up did not enable the video component of the attendees or panelists. So we'll look into it at the end of the meeting, but it was unrelated to the starting of the broadcasting, but it was fundamentally the way when the invitations went out, there was something in the invitation that didn't enable the activation of the video. So
Okay.
I'm trying to monitor my phone for some text updates. I don't know the whole detail, but we'll look into it after the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
So Chris, did you want to jump in on Imagine a Day Without Water?
Certainly. And we've participated in Imagine a Day Without Water for quite a few years. I think we've produced 4 videos that I can think of, 2 rather funny ones, and then one focused on business and how it would impact some of the local businesses, the breweries and so forth, if there wasn't any water. Kind of fun on that one too, where the couple of staff gets served a beer that is just all hops and grain. Fun stuff. And then we did a very serious one with one of our customers who emigrated to the United States from India, and the different perspective of somebody from another country, and what she basically points out, it's like a week without water, and how difficult that is, and how we have it very good here. I did share Director Boyd Hodgson sent along the little note from the Value of Water campaign, and one of the items that was in there was to work with the mayor to issue a proclamation, and Lisa did reach out to Mayor Rebecca Jones, and she's willing to work with us on it. But we are completely open to any new or different ideas for Imagine a Day Without Water. It takes place on October 21st, so still more than a month away.
And typically we're not looking for ideas from a committee. Usually staff comes up with them, but if the committee members do have any specific thoughts, whether you'd want to go more serious or more humorous or whatever you want to do, we'd be happy to hear.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of thoughts off the top of my head, but we are in a drought. And I think that maybe if we can incorporate that angle, I think that that would be important, just to sort of reinforce that it is important to conserve. So off the top of my head, that's what I can offer. It sounds like it's a great program. And I know, Chris, you had mentioned that you had made videos in the past. I know the videos that come out of your shop are they are really very good, and they make good points. So I just wanted to forward the information along in case you were thinking about contributing or participating again, if we as a district are going to do that. So I'm glad to hear that we are. And I think let's come up with something. It doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be time consuming or a big production, but I do think that it's important to participate. I think it adds a lot. I'm always thinking about ways to encourage young people to think more seriously about water, because they are going to be the ones that have to solve some of the most serious crises as we head into the future. So I'm wondering if there is potentially an angle, we maybe with a school group, or maybe with Bill Dean, or something like that, that really drives home imagine a day without water for young people. So maybe we can think about that too.
I like that. And I think drought's probably a real viable choice. The one point that I'll make is the interesting thing is the children are actually, they've kind of grown up with this kind of stuff, and they're the ones that'll admonish their parents for not, turning off the water when they're brushing their teeth and washing their hands and so forth. And sometimes it's the other generation that got so used to just having water at their beck and call that missed the boat on some of the simpler steps to actually saving water.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay, so Chris, I take it you'll move forward and develop something to celebrate Imagine a Day Without Water.
Yes, and we will certainly participate in it again.
Perfect. Thank you. Any other comments about that?
From staff.
Nope.
Okay. Moving on to the lobby display.
Yes, I'm going to let Chris take the lead on this, but just to let you know, it's a little odd. You guys have been here for 9 months, and Director Boyd Hodgson, I know you've been in the lobby. We met in the board chambers. Director Pennick, I don't even know if you've been in the lobby, so it may be hard for you to visualize what we're talking about, but the lobby is a fairly big space, and we think it could be better utilized to maybe do some public outreach. So with that, I'll turn it over to Chris. And just as a note, the two of you are going to be joining us for a tour tomorrow, and we will get a chance to show you the lobby tomorrow. So hold the thoughts you hear today until tomorrow, and you may get a better idea of trying to visualize what we're talking about. So Chris, why don't you go ahead?
So as Glenn described, our lobby is kind of rather nondescript. There's a workstation in the center that we weren't using before. We've subsequently used it due to COVID of having a separate room, but it's kind of a sparse and angular space with a lot of open space in it. Moving towards the right, you go to customer service to pay bills. Go towards the left, you go over to engineering to have plans reviewed. But there's a lot of empty space, open walls, open floor in that lobby. And I've broached before, and I'd like to broach it again out in, and Glenn's going to give a tour, General Manager Prim's going to give a tour tomorrow. Maybe when you're over in Building C, you can get a chance to look at it over in the shop where the mechanics maintain the vehicles. We have an old 1946, I believe, Jeep. It's vehicle number 9. It wasn't the first piece of equipment, but the first vehicle that we had. And it was refurbished, years ago to drive in parades. But it's like a 1946 vehicle, so it's really not made to drive at 1 mile per hour in a parade, and so it'll overheat. It just doesn't seem to be good for that. It's not really safe to drive. It doesn't have seat belts and restraints that you would expect in a vehicle these days. So it's really not a good idea for staff to drive it around. And the mechanics have had it kind of in their way for the last 6 years, at least that I can know of. Like, your neighbor wants to park his car in front of your house, and then 6 years later, it's still there. So the mechanics have asked me to help them just move it. And one of my thoughts was, hey, we could take that Jeep and put it in the lobby as part of a display. Like, here's a piece of our history. Let's put it in the lobby. But the other thoughts for lobby displays were, we have a lot of appurtenances, meters, different pieces of equipment that the district uses that the public will see. Sampling stations, maybe a hydrant, maybe a breather location or an air vac, different devices we could put in the lobby and then put signage up that basically explains what it is. And I would just like to start to move forward. We had sort of thought about this before COVID came around, but COVID punched a lot of things in the nose. So just to have some sort of lobby type display that provides some education materials to the public when they come into the offices here. And I think you'll both learn more about the lobby and the Jeep and when you get that tour tomorrow.
And a lot of the things that Chris is referring to are underground, and people don't really get to see it. So you may see a fire hydrant, but what you don't see is the riser pipe and the valve and the shutoffs and all that stuff below ground. So, the thought is to take some of these devices that aren't that visible, maybe do cutouts of them. So you actually physically cut something in half and people could see the inner workings of what's involved, whether it be a meter, a fire hydrant, or some kind of valve cluster. Just something educational and informational to adorn an otherwise kind of drab lobby. So early stages of this thought process that we had talked about the Jeep many years ago. It never happened, but it's still in the back of our mind. And just wanted to see what the policy committee thought about better utilizing the space. And again, it may make more sense to you or be able to visualize it better when you see the lobby tomorrow before the beginning of the tour.
I think it sounds like a great idea. And I think it would be a really cool feature for people to be able to come in and see everyday things like a fire hydrant, for example. You both mentioned that, cut in half and to see, what does a fire hydrant do on the inside? What does it look like? You see these everywhere out in the world, but here's the functionality of it. I think that it's a great idea. I like the idea of preserving the history and almost making it like a museum of, what we use and educating the public. I'm anxious to see the space tomorrow. I can't remember exactly what it looks like, but I really like this idea. I may also have some things to contribute. I received a box of old memorabilia and things from water districts all over the region from a friend of mine. And if there's a way that maybe we can incorporate those in there as well, I would, I'm happy to preserve those and bring them in. But they are, it's a lot of history about water in the region. So I feel like this would be a great interactive. And I guess we would probably want to limit, I don't think we would want maybe children climbing in and out of the Jeep if they come into the lobby, but being able to at least see it, I think that would be really special.
Yeah, great.
I don't know if Director Pennock has any thoughts, and please jump in if you do.
I'll hold my thought because I have not been in the lobby, so I'll hold my thoughts until after. But yeah, I agree with everything. I'd like to make it, kind of my thought process is going on more the educational side instead of just old stuff sitting in a new lobby, more on the educational side. So maybe incorporate field trips for elementary school kids or something. But I haven't been there, so I don't know all the details. But yeah, I love the idea.
Director Pennock, we would typically have students coming for school tours here, and once again, COVID-19 punched that in the nose. So eventually that'll come back again. I'm certain of it, but we're just not doing them at this time.
Yeah, no, understood. Yep. Sounds great.
Yeah, we've been really reluctant to get rid of the Jeep because it is just a piece of history, and once you get rid of it, it's gone. But so it's just sitting under a tarp in the shop back there. But I think there's a better use for it. So I sense the interest. So maybe I'll continue to work with Chris, and we'll put together some kind of a concept of maybe a floor plan and showing what exhibits would be in there, maybe some little mock-ups of what they might look like. And then at some point in time, and it won't be next month, but we can come back to the policy committee and see how you think about how we're progressing.
That sounds great.
good. Unless you want to upgrade it and Chris can drive it around if you're,
Yeah.
Director Pennock, you're getting me, because I have a Jeep at home, and I love this Jeep, but it's old, and it's really probably not safe to drive. There's no seat belts in it. I'm pretty sure safety would say, yeah, you're not driving that.
Yeah.
you just need some Velcro. You'll be all right.
That's right. Yeah. Okay.
That sounds like a lot of fun. So thank you for bringing that up, and thank you for thinking about that. I can't wait to see. I can't wait to see the Jeep tomorrow and start thinking about how we can make our lobby a little bit more interactive and historical. Great.
Yep.
Okay, moving on to policy, old business. Update on the CSDA board handbook template access. I know we've talked about this in the past as a way that we could potentially have a head start on putting together a board handbook. And I'm not sure that I understand the barrier to the access. So I'd like to better understand that. And if we've made any progress on being able to access the handbook templates.
Yeah, so maybe just a little bit of clarification on the title. I believe the issue when you first brought it up, Director Boyd Hodgson, was more about the policies, the standard policies that CSDA had. So we can talk about that, and then we can talk about the handbook. So regarding the policies, the standard policies that CSDA has, Ann Johnson did reach out to CSDA, did get confirmation that as registered owners, we can share that document. So if either of you two or any of the board members would like a copy, we could send you a digital copy, or we could print out a copy. And they're just that, they're templates, right? But it's something we could use if we thought we needed to develop a policy. And if we didn't have one already, we would look to something that already exists. Similar to what Rondi said about like a scholarship program, we'd look and see if somebody else had a good policy. Or we could look to the template and say, okay, that gives us the structure and the format, and we can just tailor it to our needs. So that part's good. We can share the policy templates with the board members. Regarding a board handbook, we do have a board handbook. It's very old though. I don't know that the structure would need to change much, but a lot of the attachments and included things would need to be updated. For example, one of the attachments is a board packet. So it has, at a point in time, we included a board packet, but it's probably a 10-year-old document. So we would put a new one in there. It has copies of like ordinance for the business of the board, and that's been updated since the handbook was put together. So the handbook needs to be updated. It's a work pill. It would take some time, and right now we're short-staffed on the admin side. But I guess the reason I bring up these two things is because I think they kind of got melded into one item on the agenda. And I just want to make sure you knew that there was kind of two separate things floating out there, and I'd be happy to talk about either one.
Yeah, thank you for that. And thank you for clarifying. In my mind, they are melded together, because I think what I'm thinking about is the ultimate outcome that I have wanted since joining the board is a document that I can reference that says, here are the ordinances that are probably going to make that you're going to deal with all the time. Here is how to do your job. And just, coming from the CSDA conference, I attended several meetings where that's a best practice to have, some kind of document. And in my mind, that's the ultimate outcome. And, there are a bunch of different ways to accomplish that. But that was, that's the reason why we're going through and updating the ordinances and sort of weeding out the ones that are no longer applicable. But having access to that and being able to understand and look up an ordinance about, for example, Glenn, you and I have been having a conversation about what's reimbursable and what's not. And it could have saved time, for example, if I could have just gone and looked at the ordinance so that I knew that. So I think, especially, and Director Pennick and I came on at such a strange time because there's no in-person meetings. There's no opportunity for mentorship from other board members. And that's a real critical piece that I learned attending the CSDA conference, that, that's how boards function efficiently and effectively, is to have, some transfer of the learning. And it's been really tough during COVID, and I completely appreciate that. But I guess what I'm looking for, and I did conflate these things, and thank you for breaking them out for me, is, what's the ultimate outcome of, all of these questions that I keep raising about the ordinances and the handbook and the templates, and, even the next item that we're going to talk about, just to enable efficiency so that I can get up to speed as a new board member, in absence of there being the ability to really have a lot of, one-on-ones with other board members where they can mentor, because that's lacking, right? It's just not the time that we live in. So yes, the standard policies, I would love to have that electronically. Please don't print it out. I'm sure it's lengthy. Please do not print it out. Just either send me a link in an FTP or a Dropbox link. And then let's have a look at the handbook and figure out, and maybe this is part of our board strategic planning. We've been talking about that, but updating that handbook so that new board members can onboard quickly and at least have a sort of almost like a home base that they can reference.
Yeah, one suggestion on the handbook, maybe what we can do is send you a copy of the table of contents so that you know what's in there. The fact that there may be an old board packet and an old ordinance is probably not that critical for the first step. And this would be like, if I were to sit down with both of you when you first started with the handbook, I would have kind of walked you through the table of contents first and then gone to each specific item in the table, in the document itself. So maybe we can start at the table of contents. You can see if you think that's a broad enough table of contents, and then we can start updating the documents that are in there. Once we agree on what should be in the table of contents, then staff can better start, adding meat to the bones, for lack of a better term, as opposed to, because it's about a 4-inch thick document. If I just put it in front of you, it'd be hard to digest and make sense of it without sitting down with you. But I think the table of contents would be a little easier so that you get a sense for, what's in the handbook. It's to orient new board members. And if you think there's something missing in there, then you can tell us that, and then we can adjust the table of contents and then start filling out the document.
I think that's a great start. And that, that seems like an efficient way to go about it.
Okay, so I'll do that. I'll forward the table of contents to the two of you, and we'll also get you copies of the sample policies from CSDA, and then maybe we can further the discussion. And I'll try to do that today or tomorrow, and then we can maybe further the discussion after you've had some time to digest the documents.
That sounds great.
Okay.
Thank you for doing that.
You're welcome.
Okay, new business. And, I appreciate that there's not a prepared presentation on this item, but I'm bringing it forward because I've been on the board for 8 months, and I don't feel like I fully understand the procedures that we have in place in the event that I wanted to write a policy or bring something forward for a vote for the full board. So I'd like to know how that has been done in the past and what some of the options are, if it's typically done in committee first and then brought to the full board as a recommendation, or if it's something that is brought forward at the full board, depending on the scope of whatever the policy is. So I just wanted to open that up for discussion so I could better understand that.
Yeah, so my view of the use of the committees is that they're a place to vet things. So I would suggest that if there was a topic that any board member wanted and they were on a committee, that if it was the right committee, obviously, to maybe start the conversation there, maybe vet it a little bit, and then bring it to the board and see if the board's interested in the concept before staff spends a lot of time. So, and I can't think of a good example, but if a member said, hey, I think we should maybe update or create a new policy on such and such, and if the board says, yeah, I think we should, and then they could usually direct it to staff, and then staff would work with the attorney's office to make sure that we're following or developing it in the right way. Is it a policy? Is it a resolution? Is it an ordinance? Because there's legal differences in these things. So we want to make sure that it goes in the right pathway. Obviously, the policies are tend to be less restrictive and they're easier to change. When things rise to the level of an ordinance, it's kind of our version of a law, right? So it's a little harder to change, more rigorous to change it. And depending what item wants to be promulgated, it may determine in which fashion or which document we end up with. I don't think we have a formal procedure or policy that talks exactly about what you're bringing up, Director Boyd Hodgson. I think it's a little bit more informal, but it would be an iterative process that would eventually go through the board and they get board concurrence that they think it's important. And then that would authorize staff to start working on that item. And it would probably follow similar to what we talked about with the scholarship and other things, is that we'd look for what else is out there. If there's some function that we do here that we don't think we have a policy for, we'd look and see if some other agency has already developed a policy to deal with that very thing before we just started developing one ourselves. So that's typically how we start. And then we would bring that, maybe a sample policy or the policy from another agency forward and see if that kind of hits the mark of what that particular director was looking for. And then we can air it in front of the board and say, is this the language that you want? But, I see ordinances, policies, and resolutions very similar to laws in our regular day-to-day lives. Oftentimes, we don't develop things until a problem is encountered. It's really hard to anticipate everything that could go wrong. So there's good and bad on that. The bad part is that the thing already happened, right? And you're in a kind of a reactive mode. So, but unfortunately, some things are like that. Something bad happens, and then we say, never again. And we're going to put a rule in place to make sure it doesn't happen again, or to clarify under what circumstances it should or could happen again. I think it's pretty flexible, though. Obviously, without any specific examples, it's a little hard to give a specific path to get there. But I think working through the committees is probably a good start. So with that, I'll pause and see what thoughts you have.
Okay, I think that's really important and helpful guidance. And I didn't have anything in particular in mind. It just occurs to me that I just didn't know how to do it. And, again, coming off the heels of the CSDA conference where I attended a few workshops, and I thought, I learned a lot from those workshops, but there was a fundamental piece that was missing. And I thought, I can't be the only person that doesn't know how to do this. So I wanted to find out what our procedure is. And it sounds like it's been flexible in the past, but and you just in hearing you talk now, I understand the perception of what the difference between an ordinance and a policy is. And I would add that a resolution is also in the mix as something that is just kind of a statement of support, right? Yeah. It's not a policy, it's not an ordinance. But now I'm clear on what the difference is for those things as well. So I appreciate that input, and I'll move forward if anything comes up that, starting in the committee is, as long as it's an appropriate sort of scope within the committee, that's where you start if you want to write a policy or bring something that may eventually be codified into an ordinance.
I think you both have a way to access the ordinances and resolutions on the website. If not, we can forward you the link, but that may be a good starting point. And I would suggest the ordinances before the resolutions, but that would be a good place to look and read the rules, the laws that are in place. We've talked before, and Anne has been working with other members of staff to try to update the ordinances and the resolutions. And I think we've made really good progress on that. One of the things we've done is to identify which ordinances still are current, because sometimes a new ordinance supersedes an old ordinance. So it really doesn't make sense to go back and look and see what the rules used to be. You want to know what the rules are. So I'll talk to Ann and try to find some way to get the two of you committee members a list of our current ordinances. And at your leisure, if you want to leaf through those, that'll be kind of the more formal rules that we have in place. And if those spark any thoughts of whether what's maybe needs to be revised, or something was omitted, or something seems superfluous, that may be a good starting point for a director to say, hey, can you either clarify or suggest maybe a change to those. But without knowing what you don't know, it's hard to get started on some of these things. So, Ann, do you have any thoughts on that, or does that make sense that we could provide Directors Pennick and Boyd Hodgson with the copies of the current ordinances in an easy format?
Okay.
Yep.
Actually, a couple meetings ago, we had all of the ordinances that are active. They are on our website, and I think we talked about it a couple meetings ago. We had Daniel at the meeting.
Right.
How to access those. And in order to get the list, because there's already an index there, when you find them on the website, they're in a list. And if you double click on the header of where they're listed, I think if you double click on that, it'll sort it so that the index is at the very top, and then you can see all the active ones, or if they've been superseded by something else. It's all on that index. And it's not for ordinances, it's not a very long list. It might be 7 or 8 pages, maybe something like that. But all that information is available on our website now, and we are up to date, except for any resolutions that were just passed that haven't been signed yet. So.
And we can resend the link on how to access those if it would be helpful.
I know it's been a tremendous amount of work. Thank you, Anne. I'm on the website right now looking, and it is, and they're listed in order by date. Mm-hmm. And I wonder what I've, and there is a bit of a description, so I appreciate that. And, it looks like the first one was 1955, which is so, that's interesting from a historical perspective. The description, I think, is very helpful. It's hard to know what you're looking for if you just have the number. But I think having the description there is really helpful. And I know that was a tremendous amount of work. So thank you for doing that.
If you click on the top bar there, if you double click on that, it'll resort that so it'll have the most current ordinance instead of the one from 1955. And the index will be on the very top. You can try it and see if you can see what I'm talking about. But
I do. Yep. I see the ordinance index. Yep. I can see that.
And then there's a bigger description there too in the index of what the ordinance is about.
Okay.
I believe there's a keyword search on that too, isn't there?
Yeah, I think so.
So for example, if you want to look up, say, per diems or travel, you could type that in, and it may give you a list of the ordinances that at least address those phrases within the body of the text.
That is good to know. I didn't realize that was there. That is good to know. Okay. Well, I know that was a tremendous amount of work. So thank you for putting all of this together. And I know that in the past, when I've asked, if we have an active ordinance that says, this repeals ordinance XYZ, and I've asked for the previous ordinance, I know that those are archived and I've been able to get those. So that's helpful too.
Yeah.
What?
And thank you for that.
Okay. Well, thank you for that.
Is that a good segue into the next item then, Director Boyd Hodgson?
I think so. I think it is.
Yeah, so, well, I guess that was the discussion for bringing it. So I'm not sure what else we need to talk about on there, but if this information leads to anything specific, we can have a more, detailed conversation. But in the theme of ordinances, so Chris is going to talk a little bit about the drought ordinance.
Thank you, General Manager Puem. So, board members, I had emailed previously a draft ordinance to both of you and to President Sinella, who was on the Finance Committee. Wanted this ordinance to go to both this committee and the Finance Committee, and then it'll need to go to the full board for review and hopefully approval. One of the big changes is that the state of California now wants 6 drought levels. Our old ordinance used to only have 4. The new ordinance continues with water waste prohibitions that are in effect at all times. Kind of a fairly extensive laundry list of things that just are not okay to do in California anymore. We're not gonna, continuously fill pools and spas that are draining due to leaks. Restaurants are only gonna serve and refill water on requests. And if you go to a hotel or motel, you get the option to not have your towels laundered, that type of thing. So those water waste prohibitions remain. Changes include drought level 1 is a drought watch. It's where we're looking for only 10% reduction. It is voluntary. And this one, the general manager would have the authority to implement. As we move up to drought levels 2 and 3, those would be 20% and 30% reductions respectively. And working with Mike Arthur to indicate that at droughts levels 2 and 3, it's a drought alert, and there would be an appropriate drought alert rate attached to the drought once new rates are approved. Still moving forward with mandatory drought restrictions. 4 and 5 would be drought critical at the 40% and the 50% levels. Additional restrictions, and those 2 levels would have a drought rate at the drought critical rate. And then finally, a drought response level 6, basically a drought emergency, where it would require greater than 50% reduction. And all the higher level ones, level 1 would, the ordinance indicates it's the general manager's authority, but drought levels 2 through 6 requires board action to be implemented. There's information on variances. Sometimes there's something complicated where a customer may have some difficulty meeting the drought requirements and so forth. So I kept the fines the way they were, $100 for the first violation. And I think I mentioned this at the Finance Committee, but for Director Pennock, I think I've only done 2 fines in the 6 years I've been working here. Basically when, after notification, notices of violation issued, not getting a response or attention from the customer, eventually just fined them. And that actually seemed to work. If you have any questions on the ordinance, would be happy to hear them, and if we need to make any sort of edits, if there's things that need adjustment.
Chris, what's the plan for taking it to the board?
So it will need to go to the full board, and I reached out to BB&K, and they recommend that there's a noticing requirement for an ordinance of this type based on a specific water code. So there would be noticing in the newspaper and so forth, and then I would have to post it some places.
And this is only during a drought, a mandated drought from the state?
Well, and Director Pennock, really the the board has the authority to implement droughts. I mean, typically what would happen is if we go to a voluntary situation, then either the general manager or the board could provide him direction to go to voluntary drought. But any of the higher levels, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that's the board's discretion to implement those levels. And typically, if we had pressure coming from water wholesalers or in the previous drought direction from the state itself, we would make a recommendation to implement those drought levels.
Interesting. Just a thought. I don't know why I have it, but it seems like I don't even know if we can legally do this. Is there a way, if we truly want to save water and implement a water savings measure, to offer, for lack of a better term, almost like a competition for those who decrease the top 5 customers that have decreased their water usage by percentage? You get a $200 credit on one bill. The first guy, the second guy gets 150, third guy gets 100. So you understand my thing. Is there a way legally and or in-house that we can incentivize people for the top 5 water savers based on percentage?
Well, that's an elegant idea. The tricky part on anything like that is always the implementation, and it's always the exceptions that make things difficult, in that you can have people that have guests or people living at their property for 1 year because of family issues, and then everybody disperses, and it really looks like the person made all these savings, but the reality was that all the guests are gone. And you can have situations where it doesn't necessarily play out well, only for the reason that there's differences between each year with every individual household, whether they've got leaks, whether they've got guests, whether they are putting in plants, whether they're removing plants. That's just kind of a moving target. And
I mean, if we just take all that out and just, bottom line, last month you paid $500, this month you paid $200, you made, 135% decrease, boom, regardless of gas, plants, anything, just bottom line savings month to month or every 6 months. I mean, is that legal? 1, is 2, is it feasible? Is there a way to do it?
There's probably some review that maybe would need to come from both BB&K and then the Wes's group, I think.
Yeah, feasibility, we can compare customers' bills month over month, but the legal aspect, we would certainly need Best and Krieger's input to make sure that providing financial incentives for water curtailments and water cutbacks to make sure that it's legal. And then there's some policy issues in there too, that the board may be criticized to say, why are you giving away district money to people that, like Chris says, may or may not have done anything other than just maybe their kids went away to college and now we're rewarding them because they're using less water. But we can talk to Best and Krieger to see if maybe there's a fatal flaw in there just from a legal perspective.
Gotcha. I was just looking at the positive reinforcement side instead of negative, penalizing people for using too much water instead of, hey, here, incentivizing you for using less. Some type of make it we could almost be the cutting edge here at Vallecitos, just make it if we're truly trying to save water, we could, that would be cool.
Director Pennock, I'm actually going to be bringing to the next, not the next board meeting, I'm sorry, not the one this week, but in October, the 3 landscape contest winners. So, there's an example, and we actually gave them rewards for participating in our landscape contest. So I think I'm going to be bringing you an example of something real close to what you're talking about.
All right. I'm sitting on the edge of my seat. Sounds good.
Yeah. And Alicia made a video of it too. So it's really cool. You'll like it.
And Director Pennock,
that's a good video. And I like this idea because, yes, the devil's in the details, and it could be that, I have 4 kids and maybe one of my kids was at camp or something. But the bottom line is that we are saving water. People are saving water. And I think that's what we want to get to. And doing it by percentage does seem to be somewhat fair. There are a lot of variables that we can't control, of course, but gamifying it or incentivizing people is, I think it's an interesting idea. So I would like to see the question asked and have a more robust discussion about it. I think it's an interesting idea. People like to be rewarded for doing good things. So let's keep talking about it.
Yeah, I'll add one way the industry incentivizes it is by providing like rebates. So for example, the Metropolitan Water District and the Water Authority will have turf removal rebates. So if somebody tears out their lawn and puts in artificial turf or low water use landscaping, we will help them pay for those improvements. So it's not, they have to put money out and they're not getting as much money back as they put out. But if it was something they were going to do anyway, they're getting a check from an outside party to recognize their efforts. And those you have confidence they're actually going to result in ongoing savings. So whether it's turf replacement or a low flow water or low flow toilet or shower head, things like that, that once it's installed, it's going to use less than the previous facility did. Those are easily supportable and they're done all the time. But in terms of just writing a check for, use less water, so we'll incentivize it. We'll check with Best and Krieger, but it may be a little bit tougher to get there on that idea.
General Manager Puem, can I chime in? I just
Sure.
want to make sure that we have this on the record. Typically, the incentives are pulling out lawns and replacing it with low water use plants. There's not rebates for artificial turf.
Right. True. Yeah. Thanks for the clarification. But oftentimes people tear out their real lawn and put in an artificial turf, but it's the money you get is because you tore out a lawn, regardless of what you did, other than you can't put in another lawn.
You're correct in that statement.
Yeah. But we'll look into it and we'll get back with you, Director Pennick.
Thanks.
Okay. I think Chris, anything else on the drought ordinance?
Nope, that's it. Thank you.
All right. I think we're on our last item. You want me to kick this off, Director Boyd Hodgson?
Sure.
Yeah, so the last item is the bill payment plans and shutoffs. So this item was I believe it was taken to the Finance Committee at the last meeting. And the basic premise is that you may recall that Vallecitos actually beat the state to the punch, and we weren't turning customers off for non-payment. I think we started back in February, March of 2020. About a month later, the governor put in a moratorium that didn't allow districts to shut people off. But that is set to expire on September 30th. So unless it gets extended, it'll be the decision of the water districts whether they shut people off for non-payment. The state will no longer restrict it, again, unless that deadline is extended. So I believe we have this item agendized. Is it on? I think it's on the upcoming board meeting. We're looking for, it's item 2.3 on Wednesday's agenda, the water service shutoff moratorium. We want to find out if the board is, what do they want to do on October 1st, assuming the state moratorium is not extended. So just wanted to get the policy committee's thoughts. And before you chime in, just some additional information. So I sent out an email this morning about the state arrearages program, where the state put out $985 million to help customers that are behind and past due. That program isn't really going to be fully run through probably until January or February. So there may be some benefit in continuing to not shut people off while we resolve the state arrearages program. Having said that, the arrearages program, the time window they set aside was from March 2020 to June of 2021. So if somebody was current in that time period, but now they're not current, we are not eligible to get arrearage payments for anybody that's gone into late payment status after June of 2021. So we would probably need some guidance from the board. Do we want to shut people off? And if so, is it just the more recent people that we can't get state arrearage payments, or is it everybody, or is it nobody? So with that, I'll turn it over to the committee to see what thoughts you may have. And then keep in mind, this is agendized for the Wednesday meeting.
Director Pinnock?
This is it is touchy. I like to consider myself a reasonable and nice person, but I'm really big on paying your bills. And I understand there's tough times, and we've been, and you can be nice. But sometimes, if you give somebody an inch, they take a mile. So I'll just put it out there. Yeah, I'm big on, here's the bill. We'll work out payment plans. And if you don't meet your obligations, then yeah, shut off.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up that aspect, because I should have mentioned that. My personal opinion as GM is that anybody who's going to work with us, we'll work with them. The frustrating part is when people don't even communicate to us or respond to our repeated outreaches. So if anybody should get shut off, it may be, if the board wanted to consider shutting anybody off, that would probably be my recommendation to the first group that gets shut off, is that the people that are not working with us to try to figure out a payment plan, or at least explain their situation. But oftentimes it'll be many months of outreach with no response that leads us to a certain situation. And those are the people that I think that's a good way to get their attention, is
Right.
if they shut them off. It doesn't mean it's going to be shut off forever, right? If we shut them off, the phone usually rings pretty quickly, and then the conversation starts.
And I'm sure there's legal notice. We're going to shut you off in 3 days or 7 days.
Always, yeah, there's legal notices we have to put out there. So it's not like we just say, hey, we're fed up, we're going to shut you off. They get the last notices
Right.
posted at the site, so they get their last chance. And even after we shut it off, if they come running out with a check, we'll unlock it and they can go right back to getting water deliveries. But so that's how I imagine the conversation going on Wednesdays, to try to get some parameters developed as to how we want to move forward, or do we want to wait while we go through this arrearages program? Hopefully we'll get some clarification from the state, whether they're going to be extending the statewide moratorium. But as of right now, the latest information I had, it expires on September 30th, which would then put it in the court of the local water districts, whether they want to resume shutoffs.
Yeah, I think this is an issue that nobody really likes. This is a situation that nobody likes to be in. It's a tough one. I think what I would like to know in preparation for making a decision is how many households are we talking about that we have had repeated attempts where we just cannot get through to them. My feeling, and I've said this before, is that we are still in the middle of a global pandemic, and reducing people's ability to wash their hands, I don't think that that's a good idea. And I know that there are people that are struggling. I know that the people that are struggling are many more than the people that are just taking advantage. So I would lean towards not shutting off the water. And we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know if it's going to be extended or not, but I also know that we have reserves. And because of Wes's team that budgeted very shrewdly, we have more money than we thought we would throughout the pandemic. And we do have reserves. So I think going into the meeting where we're going to make a decision about this, I would like to know how many households we're talking about. Is it 5? Is it 1,000? I think it makes a difference. But I lean towards saying no to shutting people off, at least not October 1st. And I think we've got a lot of options. So let's keep talking about the options, but that's where my thoughts are.
Okay, Wes is on the call, so he can feel free to pipe in, but sometimes, a question well asked is half answered. So we have to be careful how we frame it. What I can say is, and I think I heard this number from Wes, for the arrearages program, for that window of time that people qualified for, it was on the order of 500 customers that we were dealing with. I don't know how many subsequent to June we're talking about that have fallen into this late status, but won't be eligible for the arrearages program. Wes, do you have any idea?
So Glenn, the 500 are the customers that are over 60 days past due, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're not communicating with us. That's our
Okay.
total customers over 60 days past due. And that was 530 in total if you count commercial. The customers that are not responding, our last attempt, we sent out 222 letters in August to customers who are not responding at all to us. So we place phone calls, we send out letters, and these customers are just ignoring, well, it seems like they're ignoring the letters and our attempts to contact them.
Yeah, and Wes, I think that letter basically told these customers that, hey, as of September 30th, the state may not have a moratorium any longer. So it was our last shot to encourage people, get in touch with us. I don't think we said we were going to shut them off, but we did say is they won't have state protection anymore.
Right. We're basically requesting that they reach out to us and letting them know that it ends then, like exactly like you said.
So that to me, that's the target group that we really want to focus on, is to tell us your story, help us figure it out. Let's work on a payment plan. But yeah, silence doesn't help us.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I understand the frustration. Thank you for that number. That's helpful.
Yeah, thanks, Wes. Okay, so I don't know that we need any specific direction here. Again, it's on the agenda for Wednesday, but just wanted to kind of give you a heads up that it will be coming and to see if you had any thoughts. We'll do some more crunching of numbers and be able to share these types of numbers with the board on Wednesday so that the full board understands the magnitude, number of accounts, number of dollars, how long we've been trying to reach out to these people. We can talk about in what ways we've tried to reach out to the people. So we'll try to help the board reach a reasonable solution.
Thank you.
All right, and I think that's all we had on that item.
Okay, great. Thank you for bringing that forward, and I look forward to the discussion that we'll have as a full board. The next meeting date is October the 4th. And I think that's it. I think that's all we have today. Correct?
Okay. Thank you
Great.
all.
Thanks for discussion, everyone.
It was nice seeing your names on the screen.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye,
We'll see you
everybody.
tomorrow. We'll see you
All right.
tomorrow for the tour. All right.
See you later.
Take care.
Yep.
Hey, everyone.